back in the mail.
Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of the Stuck in the Mail podcast. This is not episode 20, this is episode 19A.
Woo!
We are doing a little something fun, hopefully, in between episodes. We will talk about Public Enemy soon, but today, with all the talk about the countdowns and the best album of all time, we wanted to maybe see if we could, come to some sort of objective conclusion about what is the best album of all time by critical consensus and also for us personally. I've got some fun subcategories there. This is probably going to be our nerdiest episode of all time,
I forgot my glasses.
but hopefully it'll be interesting for you as you're watching. You probably have your own ideas of what the best albums of all time are. It's all subjective, of course, but it's fun to try to put objective categories around things that are subjective sometimes.
I'm gonna put my stake in right now as Village People Renaissance. Last Village People album. Definitely a highlight for me.
Are you giving it away? Is that your number one pick?
That's the tongue-in-cheek pick, I guess.
So a little bit of let's talk about how I came up with these lists. So I'll do the quick version, not to bore you since we've talked about this
Okay.
before. But first up, during the pandemic, maybe a little bit before the pandemic, I thought I don't want to go through my whole life without having heard the best albums of all time. Some people do this with movies, top 100 movies. I haven't done that, but I have done it with music. So I went through and I listened to all 500 of the Rolling Stone top 500 albums of all time.
What possessed you to do that?
Because I'm a completist and I don't want to miss anything. Just because I
Bro.
have a blind spot, I don't want to miss, one of the greatest works of art. So I
Okay.
wanted to know what's the definitive list. Well, halfway through, of course, they changed the Rolling Stone top 500 as they do sometimes. And the Rolling Stone 2020 version of the top 500 is real wacky. And then I finished that. I listened to all the albums that were different on that version of the Rolling Stone Top 500. And then for a third data point, I went through the NME New Musical Express Top 500, which of course gives a British perspective on all of this. Those are my three sources. And so I put them all together in a nerdy spreadsheet and I created formulas and I averaged those three rankings together to determine by critical consensus of those three countdowns, what are the top albums of all time. So I have all the tabs for the spreadsheet, but the one that's most interesting is that consensus category where I take the average of
For sure.
all three lists for each album and then determine which one is going to come out on top by average. So we thought this would be fun, maybe, to do the top 10 albums of all time to see if Casey can guess them
Oh
rather
boy.
than just doing a boring reveal because Casey is the most knowledgeable music guy I know. And I bet not only do I think you can get all of them correct,
Okay.
maybe not in the first try, but I think you probably also own all of them, which will be another interesting thing. Um,
Possibly. Hmm.
and if you do, I'm actually going to do the top 12 so that you can put them in a calyx.
Okay.
Am I
Or
pronouncing that correctly?
you need a top 16 if I have because I have a 4x4 Calyx. In fact, I have at least two.
In that
Uh,
case, we're doing the top 16.
and I believe you are pronouncing it correctly. I always say the Calyx, yeah. Apparently it's now discontinued, so
Hmm.
final buyers beware.
Well, let's get into it, Casey.
Okay,
Give me
let's do
some
it.
guesses, and I'll tell you how you did.
Okay. Do I get clues? Am I just supposed to do this blindly and be like, okay, number 12?
You got to do it blend. You don't have to give me a number. I just need you to call out an album, and I'll tell you.
Call something out. Okay, well, there's going to be a little bit of intelligent guessing here. So I happen to know that Marvin Gaye was put at number one on the Rolling Stones 2020. So I would assume even if the statistical average of the NME and the old Rolling Stones, which I'm sure it was high, I'm sure it was still in the top 12. So I'm going to start off with Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, as maybe kind of like a five or six in there.
Marvin Gaye, what's going on? is number 3 of all time by critical consensus.
Okay.
Number 6 on the Rolling Stone 2012. Number 1, correct, on the Rolling Stone 2020. Number 25 on the NME Top 500. Very good. Nice work.
That's still very high. Wow. So, okay, I'm just doing this blind. I'm just going in blind. All right. I guess the second thing would be I need to figure out what the old Rolling Stones number one was. Oh my gosh. I guess I didn't study enough. My brain. This proves that it's real. I know this one. I really do, and I know several. NME is the Smiths. It's my favorite one, the one with Big Mouth Strikes Again. It's The Queen is Dead because, oh, England, you're so sassy with that, your English picks.
Are
Correct?
you guessing the Queen is dead?
Yeah, but would that be enough statistically to make it in the top 10? It's like if something's number one in another one, it's like 10 on I'm going to say number 10, The Queen is Dead by the Smiths, which I also own.
The Queen is Dead is number 58 of all time by critical consensus.
Wah, wah, wah. A much more sensible placement, I suppose.
Number 218 on Rolling Stone 2012. Number
Uh-huh.
113 on Rolling Stone 2020. Number 1 on the NME.
Okay.
Good guess, but incorrect.
I'm not doing so good. I'm having I know these lists a little bit, so I guess technically that's cheating. But I am having a hard time just staking a guess. Like I'm trying right now to imagine what the first Rolling Stones list was,
Yeah,
and I
don't,
absolutely know I know it. Absolutely 100% know it. But
well, here's what I would say. Don't worry too much about trying to figure out what each one was. Just think of what are the monumental albums and see.
well, I mean, in my mind, for my money, I'm gonna have to say 80s favorite Michael Jackson Thriller, although my favorite is probably his late 70s disco album Off the Wall.
Good guess. It is number 27 by critical consensus. Uh,
Okay, not
it
bad.
scored well on Rolling Stone, but it was 131 for Enemy.
Okay, I think I got the Rolling Stones pre-2020. So when did this list come about? The first Rolling Stones you had?
2012.
2012. I'm going to say Kendrick Lamar to Pimp a Butterfly.
Um,
Might
that
be
is
more current, actually.
at 272
Okay.
because it was not on the 2012 version at
But
all.
very high 2020, right?
2020 is number 19 of all time, but it did not make the Enemy list at all. So that's rough.
Okay. Kanye West, My Beautiful Dark and Twisted Fantasy, because of 2012 probably being in the top 12.
Hey, look, that is 68.
Oh boy.
It was a very high ranking in let's see. In 2012 it was 353, so that really hurt its chances.
All
But
right.
it is well reviewed otherwise.
All right, I'm going back to the classic. My brain's working now. I can see the pictures. Some classic Rolling Stones pick. I'm gonna go with I think the obvious. I'm gonna start with Abbey Road by the
Abbey Road,
Beatles.
number 8.
Woo!
It's 14 Rolling Stone 2012, number 5 Rolling Stone 2020. That's interesting. Number 34 Enemy. I'm pretty sure that was the highest Beatles in the 2020 version of.
Okay. And I also have that. So I think I've had all three that have been in the top 12 so far. Okay, now I'm going to go to another obvious one that the critics love to adore, even though it's missing good vibrations. The the Beach Boys with the worst cover ever, Pet Sounds.
You are correct. That is number 2 of all time.
Uh,
On both Rolling Stone lists, it's number 2.
wow.
And then on Enemy, it's 26. So by consensus, number 2 of all time, Pet Sounds, Beach Boys.
It is a good one. And one of my most earliest memories as a kid, I had a cassette of the Beach Boys. And yeah, I remember thinking that the Beach Boys were the coolest. And then Kokomo came out on the Cocktail soundtrack. And I was like 8 or 9. And I was like, Mom, you got to let me see this movie. And she actually let me see it. And it was R. And yeah, I think it was ahead of my brain. So
I would argue Pet Sounds is excellent, maybe slightly overrated.
that cover is overrated. There
I
was
just
a
think that the people think about God Only Knows and the first song, and I think they forget just how much of it is kind of dreary. But that's neither here nor there.
It's pretty dreary, but there's that one song. Oh, I can't remember the title, but the original lyrics and the name of the song, it's the same music, but it was "Hang On to Your Ego," which Frank Black covered, and I
I know
love.
there's an answer.
I know there's an answer. Is actually "Hang On to Your Ego."
Yeah.
Really interesting songwriter dissection there of like what Brian was doing. He's like, I wrote your ego. And then he's like, okay, maybe we should make it, what is it again?
I know there's an answer.
I know there's an answer. Yeah, he had a full 180 turn on that one, I think.
I'm with you. Put good vibrations on it.
It
It
helps.
it really would help.
It's a great song. Gotta love the theremin. Okay, I know there's more classics in here. So
Yeah, you got 3 of the first 16 so far.
here's another easy one. Um, Bob Dylan. So it's kind of tough. My Bob Dylan knowledge isn't as concrete as some people's. I gotta go with the one with the lady on the cover and all the albums, and it's half electric and it's half acoustic, and it's Bringing It All Back Home, or is that the wrong title?
Uh, Bringing It All Back Home is number 50 of all time. Give
What
me
was
some
the one
other Dylan.
What was the one I was thinking of?
You're thinking of Highway 61.
Oh, Highway 61 Revisited, yes.
That is number 15 of all time. Nice work.
Hmm. Yep. And I know some of the albums on that too. I know the impressions are on there, which is cool.
On Rolling Stone 2012 is number 4 of all time. They've always loved Like a Rolling Stone, and that bumped it way up.
It's free advertising, Mike. They got to do it. They have to. They got to keep that at the top. Totally free advertising.
You're doing great.
Okay, maybe there is a Rolling Stones on there, but I think that might be a little dated. The classic pick for the Stones would be Exile.
Number
My
6 of all time, Exile on Main Street.
my pick would be Sticky Fingers, but yeah, I get it. It's a fun listen. It really is.
Yep. And speaking of double albums that deserve to be double albums,
Yeah, yeah. It really is a. It plays out like a better than B-sides collection of a real bar band. That's
yeah,
one of the things that people like about it.
it's got that tough guy swagger.
It does. It does. And it's good. So how many have I got now? I have all these, by the way.
You're doing well. I think you got 5 of the 16.
Hmm. Wow. This. All
You're
right.
missing number 1.
There's another Beatles. Good old Sergeant Pepper's. Number
All
one.
right.
Number one.
Interestingly enough, believe it or not, Sergeant Pepper's is number 20
Hmm.
because it was only rated number 87 by the NME. That was the number 1 album in 2012 for Rolling Stone.
Yeah. And I think it's overrated too. Okay.
Again, put Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane on there. Now you're talking.
Sure. Those aren't on Sergeant Pepper's?
No, they
What are
should
they on?
be. They were
Yeah.
they were singles. It's one of those weird. Well, they ended up on I think they ended up on Magical Mystery Tour actually.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, that's bizarre. This is not going well. I may be looking at my crate over here that I have assembled.
I can give you hints.
Purple Rain by Prince.
Very good guess. Hold on.
It's way down though.
Purple Rain, number 28.
Hmm.
That's odd because yeah, it just 76, 8, and 91. I don't know why. Yeah, NME
Got
kind of
one.
killed that one.
I got one. This is all from the Dome. Joni Mitchell Blue.
Ooh, very good. Number 16.
Yeah.
The last one on your Calyx.
Very nice. Wow, I'm up to 6. Wow, this is just going smooth. Uh, the nice thing is I have not cheated here. I mean, I've seen some of these lists before, but it's been months ago. I'm not going on anything here besides just trying to conjure up things.
I think you're going to get most of them. Maybe not all of them, but I think you're
I
going to.
I know there's another Bob Dylan. I'm trying to figure it out. In my opinion, it would be A Change Is Gonna Come. In the Rolling Stones critics' opinions, I would say Blonde on Blonde.
You're talking about times they are a changing.
That's what I picked, but I don't think it's on there. I'm actually picking
Oh,
Blonde on Blonde.
I don't think that one is even on the top 500. Blonde on Blonde
Really?
is number 19 by critical consensus.
Yeah, that's really good pick. Didn't quite cut it, but it's a really good pick. Uh,
You're on the
so
right track, though, my friend.
there's definitely another Bob Dylan.
There is. There is.
I personally, besides the changes that coming, I'm a Blood on the Tracks guy, and I have seen that highly.
Blood on the Tracks, number 9.
Okay, good work. 7. Wow, I got 9 more. You expect me to just get 9 more of these? Taylor Swift,
Incorrect.
just good. There's Beyonce,
Uh,
incorrect. Hopefully, I don't even
no,
know.
no Beyonce. Do you want a hint?
Have I gotten both the Bob Dylans? Is there a third Bob Dylan?
No more Bob Dylan.
Is there wait, there's only one Beatles so far.
I will tell you this. There's more Beatles.
There's definitely more Beatles. Sergeant Pepper was no. So another classic Beatles that I like, I think the second album I ever owned, first album I ever bought by the Beatles was Revolver.
Would you believe, Casey, that the number 1 album by critical consensus of all time is none other than The Beatles' Revolver?
First Beatles album I bought.
Number 3, Rolling
Hmm.
Stone 2012. Number 11, Rolling Stone 2020, behind Abbey Road. And number 2 for
Wow.
an
You
Emmy.
know, it does start off with Taxman, and it has one hell of a riff.
The whole thing is transcendent. It's the Beatles at their best.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm just not a Beatles guy. As someone who buys and sells and collects records, I haven't had someone come up to me and be like, "Do you have any Beatles?" Like I'm waiting for that person because I used to get them. It's a couple years ago, and they're usually probably in their 60s or 70s, and they're looking for really obscure stuff. And I have some obscure stuff, but the kids today, they don't want the Beatles, Mike.
Well, while you're in that frame of mind, keep going on that Beatles topic.
Beatles. I mean, I would assume that it's very possible that Let It Be is on there. I definitely disagree with that.
Let It Be is not. I mean, it's on the list, but it's way down. I believe the replacements Let It Be was higher.
Wow, they have really achieved something. That's great. That is a good one.
Let It Be by the Beatles is pretty bad, honestly.
I know. I think it's bad. I don't get it.
It's the band falling apart is what it is.
Yeah. I don't want to watch 4 hours of movie, and I don't want to listen to 1 hour of album. I've put it on before, and I'm like, blech.
Yeah, not good.
This is
All right, keep going on Beatles.
What am I at now? 10? This is amazing. I can't even
8.
believe I'm doing this.
You got 8. You got half.
I know there's another Beatles on there, but I can't think of another one as critically acclaimed. Or maybe it's just escaping my memory. I mean, you always think Revolver, Sergeant Pepper's, Abbey Road, and then to some smaller extent, Let It Be, and I have no idea why.
Would you like to hear the other 2 that are in the top 16?
Yeah. I mean, I know I should just name off other Beatles albums. I know this.
Go ahead.
Obviously, it's not Meet the Beatles.
Nope.
Obviously, it's not Help. Obviously, it's not Magical Mystery Tour. Where's the few albums in there? I'm not. Oh, the White Album. Do we?
The White Album, number 7. Speaking of albums that deserve to be double.
I got like 4 or 5 copies of it right now. Put your comments in below. Contact me, DJ Think.
It's brilliant, if you ask me. I might be their best.
Yeah.
Well, Revolver's their best, then White Album.
Yeah. I haven't heard White Album as much as I should. And it's kind of Exile, obviously. You know, it's kind of their double album. Speaking of double albums, this is a concept you were talking about just last time. Yeah, White Album, Exile. Those are 2 great examples, actually, of double albums.
You got one more Beatles, Casey.
Is it that Blue Album compilation or that Red Album compilation?
No compilation.
Just kidding. It's actually hurting. It's hurting my brain that I can't come up with this. Because I'm gonna know it immediately, and I'm gonna go, "Oh, this is terrible."
The answer is number 13, the Beatles' Rubber Soul.
Okay, sure. You know, that one's tough for me because obviously I know it, but it's kind of the last of their early stuff. You know, those boring albums like Beatles 4 and
Uh-huh.
Please
Yeah.
Please Me. And there's so much
Me,
that are British and American.
yeah, to me, what ruins Rubber Soul a little bit is the fact that it's different. I mean, Revolver is the same way, but like I have the American version and it's not
Right.
nearly as good.
Yeah, the British Beatles albums are good and interesting. Um, I'm not a huge Rubber Soul guy, but I love Norwegian Wood, and it was the first sitar in a pop song. So
Well, and it's got Nowhere Man, which is transcendent.
yes, yep.
And George really comes into his own on that one, I think.
Hmm.
Okay, you're gonna laugh at number 4 and number 5, but they are big ones that are still out there.
Let me make some more guesses here. I actually think that maybe our next pick, my pick, is on here somewhere because it did so well in 2020. Public Enemy. Public Enemy number one.
Public Enemy number 1, at number 11 of all time.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Very, very good pick. It's
Highest charting rap album.
highest charting rap album. It takes the
I,
nation to millions.
I feel comfortable using the word rap too when I talk about Public Enemy
Yeah.
because there is a point where hip hop really became like on its, it became more of like I would say mid 90s even it was more a common term, but back in the 80s, if you were listening to anything that had lyrical rhythmic talking on it, you were listening to rap. Like no one, it was Yo MTV Raps. It wasn't Yo MTV Hip Hop. So the culture, the terminology changed a little bit. But when you think 80s groups, I always think rap groups.
Yeah.
I just do. Especially with Public Enemy or Beastie Boys or numerous others.
And we'll get into that, of course, on our next
Yeah.
episode. So stay tuned.
Okay, so I have literally two left. And
Five left.
I think that's the only hip hop. And I think Marvin Gaye might be the only true like soul, so to speak. I feel like there's some sneaky little pop album or hip hop album that snuck in here. And I feel like it's something that Rolling Stones will regret.
Well,
Oh, maybe the NME is messing this up. Maybe Oasis is What's Up, Morning Glory, two brothers bickering at each other. Is that on here?
good guess. It's 107 by consensus. So
I mean,
do you want to give one more guess or do you give up?
I'm still trying. I feel like
You
the
have
way
an excellent
the
list
way
here.
Blur, Pulp, all those groups could sneak up there since they're the greatest British albums of all time. And I'm familiar with that scene. When I lived in England, I lived with three girls and had another friend that was a girl, and they would just bludgeon me with that stuff. I came back loving the Smiths, and I used to hate the Smiths. When I went to England, I couldn't stand the Smiths, and they would just play it 24/7, and they just wore me down.
That's what happens with the Smiths. You get worn down.
I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, oh, okay, the guitarist is great. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, the lyrical content, it's hit or miss, but he's really good singer. And then a couple years later, you find out about his politics, and you're like, then you gotta, it's tough.
He's a piece of work, Casey.
He's a piece of work. I mean, a lot of frontmen are, so you gotta just take the music as it comes and forget about the man, right? Or the woman or anything. How about Funkadelic Maggot Brain?
No, I'm afraid
Random.
not. Mega Brain looks
Is
like
there
it is 351.
any album that starts with like a 15-minute guitar solo deserves to be in the top 100. Even though I like their first album more, Funkadelic. I don't know. I think this is the point I give up just because I don't want to bore everyone.
Well, I'm really impressed. I think you deserve a standing ovation because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of the 16, which is not bad at all.
Woo!
Would you like to hear them all in order?
Yes, just go through them. Yep.
Number 16, Joni Mitchell Blue. Number 15, Bob Dylan, Highway 61 Revisited. Number 14, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors.
I had that one like minutes ago and I just forgot it.
Number 13, The Beatles' Rubber Soul. Number 12, imagine this, Patti Smith, Horses.
Okay.
Very well reviewed.
Yeah.
Classic album.
Yeah. I
Number
wouldn't have got that one.
number 11, Public Enemy, Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Number 10, you did not guess this one. I was surprised. London Calling by The Clash.
That's horrible. How did I do that?
It's cool. It happens.
Wow, you should have said punk, and then I probably would have come up with it immediately. And I definitely had Fleetwood Mac on my brain earlier. I forgot it. So
Number 9, Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks. Number 8, The Beatles, Abbey Road. Number 7, The Beatles, White Album. Number 6, The Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. Number 5, which you did not get, The Velvet Underground and Nico.
okay. Yeah.
Number 4, which you did not get. Hold on to your hats, Casey. The number 4 album of all time, none other than Nirvana's Nevermind.
Obviously another obvious one. Okay. I'm feeling I would have just been sitting here though.
Number 3, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. Number 2, The Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. Number 1 of all time by critical consensus, The Beatles. So just a couple of interesting facts here. So this doesn't get too long, but you may find this fascinating. A couple categories. Highest ranked album by a female artist. You've already heard the first two. That's Patti Smith, Horses at 12. Joni Mitchell, Blue at 16. Carole King, Tapestry.
That's surprising.
24. Dusty Springfield, Dusty in Memphis.
Okay.
38. Shout out to the closing track on that one, by the way. Can't Make It on My Own, I believe it's called. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And Aretha Franklin, Lady Soul at number 56. Aretha, it's tough because she has a couple of albums that could be, but they're not. Like, she's iconic, but the albums are less so.
Yeah, I'm always I don't know. I've definitely come across a lot of she for me ends up being an artist that I usually have on 45. And I really like collecting Soul 45s. Some albums can be a little more hit and miss kind of collections, but yeah, I'm trying to think. Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. Is that an album of hers or?
The one that was ranked really highly recently was I've Never Loved a Man Like I've Loved You, the Way I've Loved You.
Yeah,
I think it's really high on the Rolling Stone 2020.
Yeah.
Another category that I find interesting, highest ranked albums released after 1990.
Oh boy.
Nirvana, Nevermind.
Yes, of course.
Number 4. Radiohead, Kid A, 32.
Yeah.
Radiohead, OK Computer, 40. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless,
Yeah.
52.
Wow.
Talk about a critical darling right there. And
I
then,
need that album.
and then we have the Strokes, Is This It, at 55. That is thanks to the NME, which of course gave the Strokes the number 4 ranking of all time. So I thought that was pretty interesting for
That's got quite a few problems. Is that just the 90s or 90s forward?
90s forward.
Wow, if that's the list, like that's the top 5, that's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. But keep in mind that is the consensus of all three. The Rolling Stone 2020 list has righted a lot of wrongs in terms of especially rap hip hop albums that deserve to be higher. So
yeah, it seems like it's really missing hip hop, all this, but I mean, I'm glad that my pick is the highest ranked of all time because certainly it's a good one. But can we get into my kind of ideas here on what my brain went through when I had the challenge of what is my favorite album of all time?
Well, can we get to that? Let me give you one more stat and then we can talk about favorite album of all time.
All good.
Albums that we've covered on this podcast. As we just said, Joni Mitchell Blue, 16. Now the rest of them, check this out. The Pod did not chart.
Wow.
That's
2025, number
1989 by Taylor Swift was 393 on the Rolling Stone 2020 list. Inventions and Dimensions, Herbie Hancock, unfortunately, did not chart. Blood Sugar Sex Magic made the list. 310 Rolling Stone. Then it went up to 186 on the new version. Double nickels on the dime by the Minutemen went from 413 up to 267.
Wow, that's fine.
Neither of these were on the NME, by the way. Uh, Music from Big Pink by the band went from 34 to 100, but still very high on Rolling Stone.
Yeah, that's high.
Not on NME at all. Angel Dust Faith No More did not chart.
What?
Night Clubbing by Grace Jones made 211, but only on NME.
Okay, that makes sense.
Meta Modern Sounds and Country Music did not chart.
You knew.
Blood and Chocolate, 483 on the NME. The following albums did not chart at all anywhere. Satori,
Boo.
Maya by MIA, Chapel Roan, of course,
Yeah, too new.
U2, The Unforgettable Fire, and Casey, Lola versus Power Man did not chart anywhere.
Not even on the NME. What are they doing over there?
I mean, they had some kinks, not
That's
that one.
that's an embarrassment.
And of course, The Weight of These Wings, Miranda Lambert, number 480 on Rolling Stone 2020, which is how I found out about it. So now, Casey, tell me your number one pick of all time.
Oh, well, I'm going to do so much better than that. I've got a little game here planned as well. I have had a hard time with this. And when you said the 90s albums were Nevermind and some Radiohead and whatnot, when I was a high schooler and whatnot, when Mike and I were in a band, my favorite picks were pretty definitive. It was Nevermind, and it was Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream, and it was Green Day Dookie. Now, I don't know if those hold up as well today. Certainly, I've changed so much that Casey doesn't even exist anymore. But this Casey thinks those are great picks, but those aren't my overall picks. They would be on my big list. But what I was going to do was say that there's a Casey that existed before that in the 80s as a kid. And that Casey would have to say that these are some of the best 80s picks. We have Madonna's first album. Yes, it's fantastic. We have Purple Rain, although I also like Prince's self-titled, and Thriller, which I showed. I can still remember to this day my cousins showing me Thriller, and I must have been 4 or 5, and how it was so cinematic and dancing around. I had a Michael Jackson shirt.
Nothing has ever been recorded better.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, maybe Aja by Steely Dan, but
And Toto. Some other yacht rock albums, and Def Leppard. So I've been thinking for like a week now about this topic, and kind of adult Casey came up with this as his solution. But I actually kind of think it's kind of adult Casey that I'm past, because this album, Rain Dogs by Tom Waits, and the Serious Glare, even though I unsleeved these. Notice also that this is like London Calling, only in green and pink. That I would have to say is one of my picks from adulthood. I can listen to that album endlessly. It's definitely Waits' best. I got started with Tom Waits with Mule Variations in like 2000, but it pales in comparison to Rain Dogs. On that same kind of feel, we got Townes Van Zandt. I told you I went through the collection here. This is not an original. This is his self-titled. That's another adult pick from me there. Also, the Pogues. Kept that one in the sleeve. Rum Sodomy, their second album. And then I also have my favorite punk picks. Now, this is more their new wave era, but this is something that highly influenced me when I was young. Devo there. And then I have my favorite punk picks from mostly LA. So we got Los Angeles by X. And then here's a super sleeper. We got the X, and then we got to have the O, right? The Germs. That one is really glary. This is produced by Joan Jett and is the only Germs album. So the Germs, Darby Crash singer, Pat Smear, who would go on to be in the Foo Fighters eventually. And now, let's see, we got metal. What are my favorite metal albums? I've almost subjected you to Stoner Witch by the Melvins, a mega, mega classic. And then we got back to the 80s again here. Ride the Lightning. Yes, that's right. Not Master of the Puppets. Ride the Lightning. Fade to Black. And oh my gosh, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Fight Fire with Fire. It's endless. But not only that, here's another one of my favorite albums. Iron Maiden's first album, pre-Bruce Dickinson. This is amazing. This is my favorite Iron Maiden by far, and I've listened to it 1,000 times. And Phantom of the Opera is probably my favorite Maiden song. And then we also got my indie picks, and these kind of go back to when I was in high school. We've got Surfer Rosa, produced by the legendary, rest in peace, Steve Albini. We've got Slanted Enchanted by Pavement, their first album, possibly my very fave. We got more indie cred, but Punk, Television, Marquee Moon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's going nuts. And then recent acquisition, Sonic Youth, Sister. Definitely my favorite Sonic Youth. And now we're getting into the super heavies. Station to Station by Bowie. Woo! Unbelievable album. What might look like the biggest outlier here, but I absolutely love this album. Tres Hombres by ZZ Top. Gotta show the gatefold. Gotta do it. Gotta do it. And then we're still going. Recent album that I've listened to 100 times and love. A real surprise to me. And oh boy, now it's getting expensive. I think maybe one of the more expensive albums I own. So that's Nick Drake for you kids out there, the car commercial guy. And I think I have 2 left. So I think this is really it. So we're going to go number 3, Nick Drake, Pink Moon. We're going to go number 2. I pulled out, but we're going to go Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures, original British press with textured cover.
Beautiful.
Got that at Ukiah Goodwill in 97 when I was in high school. And number 1, the album that holds up, and it's particularly great for the time of the year, the OGs, Sabbath. This is the American press, and I know the UK, which I have, is very different. I'm going to go with the US, and maybe that opinion is going to change in the next few months. I actually couldn't find my UK, but this is the one that started the sound. Tony Iommi's Missing Fingers. This sound, this thematic group is so amazing.
Is that the one with the wizard that starts out with the Black Sabbath, the song?
Hello.
Is that the one that starts out with Black Sabbath, the song, and it has the wizard?
Yes.
Love it. Great picks, Casey.
Yep.
Well, I didn't prepare the way you did, but I'll just very quickly tell you. For me, Automatic for the People by REM. It's a bit of a time and a place album. It was probably the first album that I listened to as I was beginning to really pay attention to music, and that means a lot. It conjures up feelings that no other album does for me. So maybe
because I remember how much you're into Out of Time, so
I was. There's just something about Automatic that when I think of a true work of art, for me, that's it. So
I agree.
Well, I've got to run in case the plumber gets here to fix my ceiling. But Casey, good job. Thank you for your picks.
Yep.
Y'all tell us in the comments what we missed, and maybe I'll put some graphics on this video, make it look cool.
There's definitely a lot. We missed the Kinks, Power Man.
I can't believe the Kinks is not even on any of the top 500. That is the Power Man album.
This is how it happens. Everyone just forgets them. They're like, nah. Well, that's how you find the good stuff,
Well, everyone tune in soon for Public Enemy #1.
That's right.
Cold Medina.
Cold Medina. Limpid.
Stuck in the rain.